Hey everybody, welcome to How the Sausage is Made with Chris Cosentino, where I talk with chefs, restaurateurs, athletes, philanthropists, and pretty much anybody that inspires me. We look below the surface, behind the curtain, and dig deep into how these people got to where they are today. Wins, losses, and everything in between. All right, everybody. I'm really excited to have Chef Shola Olunloyo join us today. Shola is a very unique individual in that he is hired by chefs all around the globe to help them develop, work, fix, and learn how to use ingredients, machines, technical things, but also Shola's just a plain badass and a lot of fun. So Shola, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you. How are you, Chris?
I'm great. We are occasionally going to see a cat walk through, so don't be scared, anybody. It's not a lion. It's just
a little
fuzzball.
bambini.
So, Shola, what was the start for you and in a kitchen? Like, how did this process start for you? Was this something that you'd always wanted to be? Is it something that your family was doing, or was it just something that you just gravitated towards? Or
I kind of fell into it, so I always, I certainly cooked growing up in Nigeria. I'm always very tempted to say West Africa because everyone wants to hear West Africa, but people, countries, say the name of the country, Nigeria. But, and I've also answered, what's your pet peeve, which we'll discuss later. But anyway, so, being a kid and growing up, I was part of the cooking process of cooking at home. So that gives you complete familiarity with not just ingredients, but also process. And a lot of the squeamish things that, if I had grown up in a Western country that I would not be necessarily comfortable with, like I had gotten used to by 5 years old, like seeing animals, their heads cut off and they bleed and, we turn them into food, chickens, goats, cows, blah, blah, blah. So I was very familiar with the source of food and the chain of consumption to human beings and animals. And, so you kind of learn all these little things along the way, a little bit element of butchery, sourcing, preservation, ecology in terms of are we actually literally going to eat every single piece of this cow in some way? Yes. you know. So, and then, before it was all very cool, that's how I got into cooking, and I happen to, Nigeria has a very symbiotic relationship with the United Kingdom. So I had multiple opportunities to go to the UK and see the other side of the coin. My father was a math professor at Oxford University for some time. So I had access to very smart, intelligent people who were mentors in my life, and ability to travel without any luxury necessarily. And that's what the seeds of being a culinarian. I don't even necessarily call myself a chef. There's this whole thing with a captain of a boat walks into a bar and wants to be called captain. I'm like, dude, you're just at a bar, So without a restaurant, I generally don't say chef, but yeah, I work in food. So and then from that point onwards, you walk into the industry with some element of familiarity with the process without necessarily going to a full-time cooking school to learn all these things in detail again, you see. And I had enough luxury to travel and understand food and start to read cookbooks, and cookbooks set a stage of another element of familiarity that I didn't have access to directly at the time. This is all before Instagram, the internet, and all this fun stuff we have now. And I told a story in the movie of Marcella Hazan, which was made last year. So I am in that movie making bolognese and the roast chicken with 2 lemons. And I tell a story of how that was the first non-Western cuisine, Italian, that I found affinity to in terms of stories and process, and that's what kind of gravitated me towards, Italian was delicious and then French was kind of fun and complicated, So that's how I ended up in familiarity. I mean, I got some time. I relate everything to travel. I got some time to travel to Southeast Asia. And I think that from a perspective of climate and ecology and agriculture, I think Southeast Asia gels with West Africa. in the sense that we have the same climate, we have very similar agriculture, but vastly different applications of the same essential ingredients, rice and peanut based cultures, coconut milk, there's ginger, lemongrass, various chilies, dried fish, umami, funk, all that stuff, you know. So that's how it is.
That's good.
Yeah.
Is that the new flavor element, right? There's like salty, sweet, bitter, pungent, umami, funk. Is that the new one that you're
Funk,
introducing?
I say, so I resist every opportunity to consciously say umami. So I generally just say funk,
I like that. It's
You know.
funny.
So, but sometimes I slip up and I say umami,
Well,
So,
it's interesting because like I think that's actually a really good people by using that term umami, people get a little bit non-restaurant folks or non-culinarians get a little confused by it. But if you say that funk or that, that people that can kind of register with them, it kind of opens the door for people who are a little bit intimidated by the verbiage.
I think we also think of umami much so much as an Asian construct when the Japanese started
Yeah.
putting Ajinomoto, Shiodashi, and everything, but if you think about like even before all that became conscious, the first immigrants to the United States were mostly essentially European and especially Italians in New York and the East Coast, So big Sicilian populations. What do we know about Sicily? Colatura alici, the fish sauce before there was fish sauce, So
Well, there's the question, right? Who made fish sauce first? I have this debate, right? Who made fish sauce first? The Southeast Asians or the Etruscans or the pre-Etruscans, which created cultura? So like there is this huge debate, like who made it first, right? Because there is recipes of making a form of haggis, the pre-Etruscan version, which had I'm not correct me if the pronunciation asferas,
yes.
and so it was asferas, colatura, stuffed into this lamb stomach. And those were the two seasoning elements. But this is like eons ago and pre-Scottish haggis, right? So it's like this lamb stomach. But those are two flavoring elements. So like, who was the original creator?
So I think the important question actually is not who made fish sauce first. It was who applied fish sauce first. Because I think fish sauce by default is an incidental product of preservation. People salted fish, and then one day somebody tasted their finger with like messy stinky fish sauce and like, oh my God, this is actually tasty. And they start drizzling over things. Yeah.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, when you get the salted anchovies, right? And when we were at Encanto, we used to get the big salted tins, right?
Yeah.
And I used to dump it out.
Yeah.
And keep all the salt.
Yeah.
And and dry the salt and finish. And the guys are like, what are you doing? I was like, well, we pay for it all. We pay for the salt. We pay for the anchovies.
Anchovy salt is the greatest thing you can put on tuna carpaccio.
I was like, don't throw away the salt. We're going to dry it. And then so we would like take the salt, we would put it in the oven with the pilot overnight to have it be super dry so it wouldn't. And everybody's like, what are you doing? I'm like, we pay for it.
Right.
Just like you pay for brine and olives, right? And when you buy by the kilo, we use all that liquid brine for.
I used to melt. I used to add hot water to the salt and the fish juice in that tin, get it liquid.
Yeah.
And I just keep it in a bottle in the fridge. And I used to add like 2 tablespoons of that to like rub like Judy Rogers' Zuni chicken. And it was even better.
There's so much cool, like unique things to like that can be done.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And we take things for granted, right?
Yeah.
Like, so what was that like? So you're now in the you went to the UK with your dad and in London. Were you working there or was it just about like travel and schooling?
It was just about travel and school. I spent the summers there, not living there full time, you see? And then I would come back.
Was it a traditional school? So were you going to like...
I went to like a boys boarding school in Nigeria. And then I would spend some summers in the UK. Yeah. And then my family just moved back and forth. I still have a brother who's a UK citizen now. And we just kind of, the web of friendship and sibling rivalry, moves us around the world. So the UK kind of like exposed me to like, again, because London was very still a very international city. Despite its poor food population, it was the landscape gateway into like India, Pakistan, Bangladeshi cuisine. Little elements of West Indian before you've actually gone to like Jamaica, the Caribbean, you see. So you got a lot of that from, I would say that outside of Queens, New York, like in terms of finding a really true international authentic melting pot, like London is actually not, to be underestimated.
I love London. I think culinarily it's a
Yeah,
great city. I mean,
it's a great city.
you're a 1 hour hop from everywhere, right? You can jump on a cheap Ryanair flight and you can end up anywhere. But it also allowed so much great product to come in to
I'm
London,
just a
right?
big fan of fried fish in any form, so that is one thing they
yeah,
do well.
there's a lot of, I mean, so much interesting food there.
Right.
I
Yeah.
think it's. And so what year was this that you were going back and forth as a
Well,
kid?
this was in the late 80s to early 90s, and then ended up in the United States in the 90s. I think I remember I permanently was here 2 years after Greg LeMond won his second Tour de France. That's my
That's amazing.
benchmark of like
That's your
what was
timeline.
happening at the time. 1990. Yeah, because he won 89 and 90. That's it. I was like, yeah. And I was into cycling just like you are back then. So I was watching it, long before the days of Lance Armstrong. But we won't get into that. Yeah. So coming to the US was just it's a little bit of a culture shock. It's like you built this familiarity with like a lot of cuisines, and then it's always like you're saying like bigger is gonna be better, and it is bigger, but it's just like, wait, like this is not necessarily like the thing from like where it comes from. Like what's going on here? Like especially like it was so obvious with Italian food. First of all, everyone started pronouncing everything I had learned like with totally different names. It's like, what is prosciutto? I'm like, you mean prosciutto? Like, you know, and Philly is like.
So where did you end up? What was your first city you ended in? Was it in Philly?
I ended up in Tribeca for like 9.5 months, which is not a terrible place to live, and then Philadelphia. Yes. So and then Philadelphia was just like hardcore South Philly Italian, gabagool, all that stuff. Like,
that's an interesting part of the Italian American U.S. that Italian American culture is very unique, right?
It is like super unique.
It's super unique,
and I love it. But this is not a criticism. Yeah,
it's such a powerful part. I mean, that was part of my childhood, right? Like growing up Italian American.
Yes.
You had the markets, and the pronunciations were different than traditional, of course, but also the food product was like, it had to be augmented. And I think a lot of folks, when we look at what everybody came to the U.S. during those times, of course, of immigration, and the traditional ingredients they had in Italy were not available here.
Yes.
Right?
No.
So things changed,
yes.
and the vernacular changed because the ingredient changed.
Absolutely.
So like bologna, the bastard stepchild of mortadella, because they didn't have the pistachios, yes. They didn't have all the final, the boutique ingredients, became bologna, which is henceforth the town. It's a poor pronunciation of the town where mortadella came from, Bologna. Right? So it's really interesting when we start to look at those unique historical aspects of the Italian American food, the culinary vernacular. It really changed based on what was available.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
And it's cool and it's interesting. And also now that we have the influx of the traditional Italian products that we can get, or products have evolved dramatically.
We can get anything now. Yeah.
We can get anything now. So there is that interesting part, right? When you go and you're like, "Can I have prosciutto?" And they're like, "You want the prosciutto?" And you're like, "No, I want the San Daniele or the
Yeah,
Parma."
you
You
know,
know, you got to be super particular.
Parma, San Daniele,
Yeah,
all good.
it's so. What was that like? Being in Philly and being in Tribeca, making that shift, and what was it that made you come to the States?
I didn't come here directly for any reason other than I had a sister who was going to medical school here at the time. So it made sense to come and sort of like share 2-bedroom apartment. And then that's how I ended up in Philly eventually. And I kind of like went off in my own culinary direction. I found like chefs who were, there's this whole controversy about staging now from all these little snowflakes everywhere, but back then it was like a welcome thing to just go to a restaurant and knock on the door and say, "Hey, listen, I would like to stage per se." And they would ask you if you know how to cook. I'm like, reasonably well enough, I think, to do something here. If you tell me how to do it properly, or your preferred method. And so, there was a chef that was very well known here who was also a very good academic. His name was Fritz Black. He had a restaurant called Deux Cheminées, Two Chimneys. It's not well known in the context of American restaurants, but it was probably one of the 10 most important restaurants, I think, of its time in American, I would say, history. Fritz had a degree in biochemistry and animal husbandry from the University of Pennsylvania. And he had, I would
Wow.
say, the single best cookbook collection of anyone in the world, like historical cookbooks and just such a depth of knowledge in so many specialties. And so you working there, you were able to just go upstairs and spend as much time, even on your day off, in the library to just read up and learn so much in history and tradition. Like we're not talking like any of the fancy little details that everybody wants to do today. How do you make a pierogi dough that has that chewy, mochi-like texture? Like an old Polish cookbook. He was friends with like Chef Louis from like Johnson and Wales, who would come here and teach us stuff.
You got to work with Chef Louis Sasmir?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh my God, he is okay. So for folks out there who don't know
Yeah.
Chef Louis Sasmir, he was in Chicago. He had a restaurant called The Bakery. He fought to change the perception of what chefs were, and he took us from what was considered the garbage men of careers, and he moved and elevated us in what the public would view us as our career. When I was at Johnson and Wales, Chef Louis Sasmir lived in our dorm on the top floor, and he would come down and have lunch with us, or breakfast or dinner in the cafeteria that the students would prepare. And he was amazing. I mean, he was physically larger than life, and also personality was larger than life, right?
Amazing guy.
Um,
Yeah.
Amazing chef. When he donated his entire culinary collection, historical collection, to Johnson and Wales and the Culinary Museum. So if anybody has the time and is interested in seeing a really cool part of history and the evolution of chef in the United States, go to the Johnson and Wales campus in Providence, Rhode Island. You can pay to go through the museum and look at everything from uniforms, the first gas stove that he saved from his restaurant, that when it evolved from wood to coal and coal to like actual piped in gas. Every piece of thing he saved his entire life. I don't know how he did it, because it's tons of stuff. But he was so amazing. Like, the first time I had radishes with butter was with him. And I was a freshman student sitting in the cafeteria. And he would comment about how nobody realized what was right in front of their face as students. He was larger than life. He really was just an incredible, incredible chef. So, folks, if you have a chance, check him out. Chef Louis Sasmir. His restaurant was The Bakery. And he was amazing.
And that was indicative of what made Jewish Chaminade great, is that you had all his friends of Fritz who would just come in and spend like a few days, a week, something, and just teach you something that you would never have known, like jump in generations. I still make Chef Louis like golubki, the stuffed cabbage with beef from
Yeah.
Poland. It's so good, so light. It's incredible. The tomato sauce that it makes. Hungarian paprikash, all of those things. So, for me, I was kind of always been a little bit more of a classicist in terms of learning, the foundational history of cooking and what it was, as opposed to what it is today, to just continue to keep a frame of reference, very much in the way I approach music, jazz to be specific. Um, it was a very rewarding experience working for him. Um, that cookbook library is still here. It was all donated to the Van Pelt Library, University of Pennsylvania. If you go there, you can go read and see some really great history of food and American food itself. But it was from that point on, at one point, Fritz came to me and said, "I think your time here is done." I'm like, "Am I being fired?" I'm like, "No, you're not being fired, but like, I think it's time for you to go work at the Bec-Fin." I was like, "Is that so?" I've heard like quite the stories. So anyway, he talked to me about it. He's like, "You're very talented. You have a lot of, knowledge, a high knowledge absorption rate," is what he said. I'm like, "Oh, you mean
That's a
I
very
don't?"
scientific. That's a very scientific
I know.
way
It's
of
like,
saying
I don't
it.
screw things up after you've shown me how to do it. Is that what you're saying? Okay, I appreciate that. And then, so I did, in fact, just one day walk to LBF and knocked on the door and asked to come and stage for like, they do like week stages. And I met, this really amazing human being, Peter Gilmore, who was like the chef de cuisine of the restaurant. Just really incredible person to work for, very detailed, dedicated. I'm not like a happy-go-lucky at work. I want to work for like someone who's like all business, just like they may be a little grumpy, but like they get shit done. Sorry, I should not say that. But Peter was great. And then eventually, obviously, Georges Perrier was the owner of the restaurant and was there every day with us. That was just one of the richest experiences you could ever have in food, just because back then, I don't think the kind of stuff we got to do, I don't know, I don't want to be presumptuous, but like, just like, even like the way we just made all our sauces, like it was like one person's job to become the saucier. And you had to make like close to like 25 different things, you know, there were like all the white sauces for fish, all the ones for meat, for PM, and like all the interesting ones for the bar. And it was the best system I've ever seen anyone. And I've never had, I think, a better sauce in any restaurant since then. Like there would be like, they trained all the dishwashers. They were like, almost like a whole walk-in for like sauce making. It was like 5-gallon buckets of like roasted bones, beef, veal, lamb, pigeons, lobster, on and on and on. Every like terrestrial protein. It was like Jurassic Park. It's crazy. And then the the guys had also done like also 5-gallon buckets of like all the meal part components, celery, carrot, onion. They had like 25 Tide bouquet garni for you. You just walk in there with like a coffee in the morning. You're like, this is life. This is amazing.
So what location was this?
This was
Was this
15th
the
of Walnut.
So is this the original location
No,
where Mark
the original location is where Vetri is now.
Vetri is
Yeah.
now? This was the second
This
location.
was the second
Okay.
location, the big location where they had the big kitchen, and we had a
Okay.
full downstairs, three 36-inch French flat tops. And you know how hot those things get,
Yeah.
Montague, like blazing hot. And you would just get, we had like this giant Mauviel pans, big boys, slide them on, a couple of rondos. And you're just like, it's like you're just like kind of like playing like Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers. Like all parts are filled with oil. Mirepoix is like roasted. The bones are going in. Like you're just like making sure you're not also burning anything. You're stirring with like bottles of wine. You're deglazing here and there like a madman, And then you pour in all the stocks, bring everything to a simmer, skim, and then just watch it for like 3.5, 4 hours. It's crazy. It was so good. Yeah. So much fun. And to be able to do all, and we made some really spectacular stuff that like cost was not an issue. Like those, I remember like George's version of Bordelaise, which they called sauce Medoc. It wasn't like some bullshit red wine. It was like 750 milliliter bottles of Medoc from France. I'm like, dude, that's like $90 worth of wine for like sauce. Like, what is going on here? But
He didn't care.
Well, you
He didn't
tasted
care.
it. It was amazing. It was like this is what everyone aspires to want to do. Like I remember the what is it? The sauce very good. Like 3 cans of
Yeah.
truffle juice, Madeira, that's like $50. Whole bunch of truffles shaved into it, glaze, tons of French butter. I'm like, oh, we were
I mean,
spoiled.
he was notorious. Like, he was
It was
notorious,
notorious, but
right?
we had fun and it was great and it was good. I learned so much about the finer points of seasoning, the relationship between sherry vinegar and like walnut oil to just dress like a Lyonnaise salad and know like how flavor is done. I mean, the greatest times at Le Bec-Fin when Jean Banchet would show up and hang out for the weekend, from Chicago. And Jean Banchet and George were like great friends, and Jean Banchet would teach us how to do a lot of charcuterie while he was there. So like I learned how to make country pâté from Jean Banchet, sweetbread terrine de veau, all those things, all those fancy things, Sevilla, Toulouse sausage, all the super tasty
Amazing.
French. What's that other sausage that I really love? Motel sausage. There was a rumor you used to have a charcuterie company at one point,
Yeah.
so
A
this
long time.
things.
Yeah. A while ago. We used to, at one point, we used to do that.
Oh my God.
So being there, I mean, there's a lot of people came through his kitchens. You were there. You were at he was pivotal. Like Michael Riccuti from Riccuti Confections
Yeah.
worked for him.
Yeah.
You had, I mean, the names are endless, right? And what year was this that you were there?
This was like 90 to like, no, so twice. 92 to 95, and then 98 to 97 to 99. I took some time
So
off. Yeah.
I was in DC at that time, and I remember, I was working with Kincaid, and he was the Lebec-Fin conversation was powerful,
It
right?
was.
I think Susanna Fu's cookbook came out
It
that
was
year in
across the street from
'94.
us. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and everybody was talking about how Philly was booming, and it was just such an interesting. Like, he was so traditional. DC had Jean-Louis Paladin,
Right.
and then there was Lebec-Fin,
Right.
right? And everybody knew who he was. Everybody knew who he was.
Yes.
I mean, they made a movie about him, for
Yeah.
crying out
Yeah.
loud.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And his intensity and drive was like really inspiring for a lot of people, and but also scared a lot of people, right? He was the old school French chef in the US.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
it. I mean,
And
I think that was,
honestly, the Frenchies in New York respected him, which was kind of a really important compliment. Like Alan Sayak,
yeah,
Christian Delouvre, who was what's his name? Amazing guy, Lespinasse, Grey
Grey
Kuntz,
Kuntz.
all those guys, yeah, yeah.
That was a different
That was a
time,
different time. Yeah.
and it was traditional, beautiful, classic, So you do your 2 stints there, and what comes next? Because I mean, that's a pretty heavy duty, like, load of fun, like intense load of work. As a chef, I'm always asked the same question. What's your secret to making a restaurant quality dish at home? It's not just the ingredients, it's how you bring them to life, and it starts with the right tools. Heston's ProBond professional clad cookware collection will give you control, consistency, and confidence. It's cookware that makes you want to cook more. Check it out at hestonculinary.com and use my promo code COOKWITHCHRIS for 10% off your first order.
What comes next? I mean, I went around and traveled around Europe, lived with my brother, and then just like went to eat in restaurants, and learned how French food was being approached in Europe. Not staging so much, but just like take time off from cooking and just go eat and ride my bike. Really, honestly, cycling was fun, and I got to like, but it ended up being a really rewarding experience. I went to eat at places like Waterside Inn, the Fat Duck. I went to Le Manoir or Court Saison. That's amazing place. Gordon Ramsay on Royal Hospital Road, the original one before he moved. And and I just got to see food in France and England and Italy with different eyes, just to see like what is food now, and came back to the US, came back to Philly, and I through some coincidence, met a lady at some event who was a personal assistant for Steven Starr, who at the time had 2 restaurants. 1, 2. I think now he has like 42, you know. And I met Steven, and Steven's like, "Hey, we're opening a French restaurant and we're looking for chefs who can cook French food." I'm like, "Oh, great. I used to work at Bec-Fin for XXX years." He's like, "Great." Next day, I got in a limousine with Steven Starr and like a bunch of people, you know, his executive team. And we drive to New York. We go to Balthazar. And we order like everything on the menu times 2.
Wow.
And we taste and like talk about all of it. And after some continuing development, we opened this restaurant called the Blue Angel, Lounge Blue, in Philadelphia, which was like Philly's first real French bistro, you know, like, you know, steak au poivre, you know, rabbit moutarde, all that, like classic bistro food, which I had never had experience in. I had cooked like all of that stuff on the high end. You know, I was doing like saddles of rabbit, stuff with black trumpets and foie gras. Not just
A
like,
little bougie.
exactly,
Yeah.
not just like the roasted leg with mustard sauce and cream, which is also super delicious. You know, I'm like, oh, this is way easier than what we used to do. So bistro food I love. You know, I made all the beurre blancs just like Le Bec-Fin style. Like I do the meat sauces. It was kind of interesting, and working for Steven was great because they just like they knew enough that they appreciated what you were doing, and they didn't know enough that they just let you do whatever you wanted. So I'm like, I need more
That was
else.
early on. That was early
Yeah, that
on.
was early. I'm like, I need more else. It's spring. They're like, why can't you just use regular white mushrooms? I'm like, because they're not more else, you know. Well, they're like 4 times the price, and we'll charge more. And they're like, okay, buy them, you know, whatever, you know. So they were really fun people to work with. I love the Star Restaurant Group. You know, still have a great relationship with them. And working with Steven kind of like also gave you the knowledge of how big operations run. You know, like you want to run a 250-seat restaurant and you can't run out of any food. This is who you go work for. And you watch the company grow and, you know, done a little bit of consulting here and there informally with them. That was a very important kind of way to learn how to see the other side of the coin from like moving away from esoteric, delicious, high-end food to like, you know, kind of the fancy stuff. And I think it was at that point that I never had the illusion that I wanted my own restaurant, although I tried at some point and it didn't quite work out. But it made me reconsider like what's my fundamental relationship and interest in food. You know, it's a development of flavor and acquisition of knowledge, you know. And if there was a way to leverage that into something that makes me money and I don't have to wake up and wonder if anyone's going to show up, you know, sober to cook today, or the servers are not going to be fighting with each other. One of the other million things that could go wrong with owning a restaurant, you know. I'm like, we're going to go into consulting, but in a kind of a fun, unique, and different way that maybe doesn't exist. And that's where it occurred to me through some reps that I had worked with and understanding that I'd spent enough time in Europe and to understand that the Europeans were a bit more technology forward in cooking and the Americans were weirdly a bit more resistant to technology in the kitchen. And the first device that I connected with to make me continue that process was Rationale, the combi oven. I'm like, everyone in Europe has a combi oven. Like, why doesn't anyone have one here? It's like, makes everything so much better and easier, blah, 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 blah. So I started this whole thing, you know, that's how Studio Kitchen started. And I kind of had this like RCC partnership with my local Rationale sales director here in Pennsylvania. And then it grew to working with like the company nationally in terms of being a, you know, I don't really like the word ambassador, but I guess that's the most appropriate term, like an ambassador for promoting combi cooking and especially Rationale as the industry leader, the category creator, you know, and maybe the best technology, I think also, then opened the door to learning the corporate structure of like culinary development. You know, some of the things we do now, that led to working a little bit with Aeronox, you know, because combi cooking is, goes hand in hand with blast chilling and the whole cook chill cycle, and finding ways for chefs to kind of just like, we're not saying you shouldn't know how to cook in a very organic and analog sense, but like there's certain things that make sense that you should allow technology to do for you. I don't think you need to. You see what I mean?
Well, yeah, no, 100%. And I think one of the things that I think is really important is that, and what you said and what you're doing is that you understood the basics of technique first. Now, then you gravitated towards the technologies that were being used all throughout Europe, like rationales. Sous vide technology was, in Europe, before it came here to the States. But understanding, you have to know the basics. You have to know the classics. You have to understand history before you start using the new technology. Because if your new technology breaks, how are you going to continue to do what you're doing if you don't know the basics?
Yeah.
And I think there is a huge benefit in utilizing these technologies. It's time efficiencies. It's like such a simple thing as product shrinkage when you're cooking, right? Like you have higher yields with utilizing the combi ovens. So there's a million different ways for benefits from it. And no, this isn't a commercial, folks. This is just us being honest. Like you have to look at staffing, you have to look at functionality, you have to look at speed and efficiencies in a restaurant now more so than ever. And how do you maximize those things? I like the old school way. You know that. But you like the old school way too. But sometimes we can't get the old school way done the way we want to in the time we have allotted. How can we?
Not for 200 seats. Yeah.
No. And I remember meeting you for the first time at Star Chefs convention.
That's right.
Right?
Brooklyn.
And that was in Brooklyn. And you were outside working on a closed charcoal grill oven.
Copa.
And that was the year that Francis Mallman showed up.
Yeah, that was the craziest thing ever. And you're just like cooking steaks randomly in a charcoal oven for your client in Brooklyn. You turn around, some guy's like, "Can I try some of the steak?" And you turn around and it's Francis Mallman. And I was like, what the, like.
That was hysterical because I was laughing at you because of it. I was like standing there and we were laughing about it.
Is this a joke?
But
really?
Yeah.
But he turned out to be like the nicest guy, and he tried the meat, he enjoyed it, he like poured me some Malbec that he brought with him, and it was such a super good guy. It's like we're drinking steaks and wine with Francis Mallman at 11 a.m. It's the greatest day of my life. Yeah.
But no, I think the interesting thing is like there is a need for education and understanding of not only classic techniques, but also the step of moving forward for efficiencies without compromising quality.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think, and that's what your role has really become.
Exactly.
And it's really impressive because, we ping ideas off each other all the time. Like I'll call you and be like, what about this? And what's that with this? And I think having those options for chefs who may not have the time to figure those things out on their own, right? That is a benefit.
Yes. And you actually remind me of something that's very important as part of this whole story and trajectory. At some point in the mid to late 90s, early 2000s, actually, I was in conversation kind of like by default with 5 different people. And it turned out the 5 of us started to be like a sounding board for a lot of chefs. I had started the Studio Kitchen blog, and I was just like writing everything I did for free on the internet and putting it out there, which was inspired by my friend Alex Talbot. Ideas in Food. Alex is like, you should catalog all this stuff and just put it online. It's like, it's awesome. And I started doing that. And then at the time, for some period of time before he got super busy, Sean Brock had Ping Island Strike, and he was also blogging on the same platform. And then there was this lady, Linda Actel, who had a blog called Playing with Fire and Water. And Linda was a badass. Linda in like 2003, like long before Noma and any of these things that people are doing, Linda was making koji and miso in Connecticut, like from scratch, and showing us the whole process. And our heads were blown away. And so
I
all of those blogs, like so many chefs I run into today, like cooks in restaurants, people were like, we miss all of those blogs. Like you guys were like amazing that you were, it was kind of like the Miles Davis quartet, we were just like so much information and shit. Best compliment I ever got was the first time I met Wiley Dufresne. And Wiley's like, whenever people came to work at WD-50, one of the first things we'd ask them is if they had seen any of those 4 blogs yet. I'm like, really? Like, that's pretty nice. That's really special. Yeah.
well, I think that's really funny because to me, we were all part of this time where internet was booming with information, but the 4 of you were the ones that really kind of opened everybody's eyes. Alex used to spend weeks with me at Encanto.
Yeah.
He'd be like, hey dude, coming to town. Can I hang with you for the week? And we would like cook like crazy.
Yeah. And it would just make so
Right?
many things that are crazy and obvious, but you would never have thought about it. Like,
we rethought things. We would like test things. And I was cooking with so much offal back in the day that Alex would just be like, all right, let's look at this. And we would look at noodles and we would look at because I had the extruder back then. And, we had gotten an extruder really early in the game and at Encanto. And it was all really fun.
it was so much fun. Like you look at Instagram today, literally it's a joke for me. I say like how to be a clever, creative person on Instagram. Number 1, go to the ideas and food blog, pick your whatever you want to video
and redo it.
And then just redo it. Look, I found out how to make brown butter salads and keep them like dry and use them for things. I'm like, really?
Well, it's so funny because I remember when Alex came. Here's a good one for you. Alex came and we were like tinkering around with stuff, and it was the first time I'd ever bought Vana, right? Like a 5-pound block of Vana. So like the B grade sea urchin, and I was making sea urchin sauce with it. And finally, and Alex was there and we were doing that. He was like, this tastes so good. And I was like, fuck it. Let's just blend the Vana and use that as our hydration for noodles. So we extruded sea urchin
Exactly,
noodles.
yeah.
And
Amazing.
Alex and I I was like, oh, we have to put a special pot on the stove because we can't boil the noodles in the other, right? But it was such a fun time because all those blogs at that time were pushing us to create. And this was like just at the cusp before like Twitter and Instagram. So it was literally you guys were cataloging things prior to it all being Instagram and timestamping that way. So it just like it was such a funny time.
The single best pasta I have ever made myself was the idea of Alex's extruded uni noodles. And he had an updated one that had like the uni, egg yolks, and yuzu kosho, and just extruded all that. And guess what I served it with? That smoked butter that we saw in Chicago and the uni botaga that you gave me. Just grated with toasted breadcrumbs, Take it back to Sicily. Like, good Lord.
Like, those times were, Alex was part of me making blood targa and the sea urchin botarga, like all of those, like us hanging out and tinkering and playing. And those were good times. It was a open for creativity, but also fiscally viable to be creative at that point.
Absolutely.
As a restaurant.
Yeah. And which brings us to like a big part of like, so a lot of these things people will think we're just playing with toys and like having fun, like for me in justifying people buying things, return on investment is a very big part. I have to do a lot of math to show people, I'm working again with Mini Pack, in your neck of the woods in Orange, California, vacuum sealers. Yep. And even that technology has expanded so much into things like marination. I'm trying to show like bartenders creative ways to like make simple syrup so that like having to heat it and cool it, you can just like, melt it and then make the ratios and infuse and let it sit for like an hour and it's ready to go. And, if you have luxury to like marinate things faster, make different infusions, all of those things. We did a lot of work to filter out what is cool and what is cool and unnecessary from what is practical, So does your restaurant need a vacuum sealer? I would say 99% yes. Does it need a rotary evaporator? I would say that 95% no.
No.
So, you know, can you afford a centrifuge? Yeah, 50% yes. If you can, and you have a room to hide it in, you make some really cool, like shockingly clear sauces that are delicious. People are like, wait, how is this? This is impossible. This is like pea juice that tastes like peas. Oh, you have to just blend a bag of frozen peas and centrifuge it and pour it out, and like, holy cow, you know, zuppa con
but
piselli
but not everybody has the time as a chef
or
to
resources. Yeah.
and the resources to manage their business and be able to do the tinkering with equipment prior to buying it,
No,
right?
no, absolutely. Yeah.
And I think that is a pinch point for a lot of people because they're interested, like, will this benefit my business?
Yes. Yes.
Will this help me?
Yes.
And I think allowing somebody like yourself to come in, show potential value, long-term value, like return on investment, really allows people to grow their business and grow their portfolio.
And I don't think a lot of chefs who understand clearly. So I'll make it a little bit more clear now, like how some of this consulting work works. I build relationships with manufacturers primarily. Every now and then, often enough, I'll get like a direct end user consulting where someone says, we're developing this concept. We need someone to do the food and train our staff on how we're going to do it, and, I'm like, yeah, sure. After we come to an agreement, I'll do that. But like for the average chef who's running an independent restaurant and saying, hey, we're building a second place. I need a combi, or I need a vacuum sealer, and we wanted to talk to you about it. Like, how can we work this out? I'm like, you just have to make the time. You don't have to pay me anything to do that. If you can make the time, I will show you the brand I work with. I'll show you the attributes. I will hope that you buy them because I only pick these things within my portfolio to tell you, like, this is why this is better and this is why you should buy this. And the best thing you can do for me is to actually go buy it. You're not going to buy it from me. You're not going to pay me anything, but it works with my representation, my commissions in cases where there are, and my continuing relationship with these manufacturers to continue to do things and expose chefs to smart, clever, sensible technology, without them having to do anything except invest in it. That's it. You know, I think sometimes people are afraid to like either reach out or ask us questions. I'm like, I'll tell you anything. I literally used to put all this stuff on the internet, not behind a paywall, just read it and, thanks, Shola. This is how you make Chateau Chalon sauce, Yeah.
I think that to me, that is one of the best parts about the business is that you're not keeping things behind the shrouded wall or the locked door. You're sharing the information, and if people care to use it, they can, and they're accessible to you, right? You're not inaccessible, and I think that to me is what's really makes it interesting. Is there's a lot of technologies out there we don't all know how to use,
The less we
right?
share, the more cluttered our brains are. I would say that, you know, um, there hasn't been a lot that's excited me in a long time, but I think I would certainly say that my most rewarding culinary experience to date was probably the time in 2020 when I got to work with Dan Barber at Blue Hill. Back then they had this residency program during the pandemic, and then they reached out to a bunch of chefs around the country and the world to like be the resident chef of the restaurant for like 30 days or so. So I was the first to do it, and it was very kind of a weird, surreal experience, going from like having like no employees to like 65 collaborators, you know. I mean, they didn't work for me, but like they had the Blue Hill infrastructure, which is excellent. Like there was the farming team, there was the animal team, the fermentation, development, all this stuff. And it was just like, oh my God, this is like how it feels like to be the president of the United States. All you have to do is wake up and put on your clothes and go down to your office. Then nobody tells you what to do. You're just like, this is what we're doing today. Here are your options. But like Blue Hill just made cooking an absolute and complete joy. Like in that sense, people say, no matter what you want to say about whatever you've heard about it, whatever, like just the whole whenever someone says my restaurant has a farm, like this place is a farm. Like it's not like a garden with like a handful of stuff growing on your roof, which there's nothing wrong with. Effort is always good. But like just to be able to see the life cycle of ingredients, produce, everything, and just it's amazing. That is my favorite place to just go, and I should spend more time at Blue Hill. That's one of my promises to myself this spring. But I'm gonna call Dan, but I'm like, can I come hang out there for a week, please, please?
What was it like making that transition to this consulting and working with, companies to educate and not only educate the company, right,
Yeah.
on what can be done,
Uh-huh.
which I think is what's really interesting is you're not only educating chefs about the uses of whether it could be a rationale,
Yeah.
it could be a thermomix, it can be a million different
Hmm.
pieces of equipment, but you're also educating the producer of said equipment on the potential of what their equipment can do, right? And it goes both ways. And I think it's really, what was that like making the transition
It was
to
it
that?
was a little bit tricky because you find that across the board universally, all the companies that invest in massive technology always seem to use like relatively pedestrian app- applications to promote it. Like I remember when some company manufacturers were like, "Look, you can make like 500 pre-frozen croissant in like 10 minutes." I'm like, well, unless you're in a country club or like some massive hotel, there's no, you basically have to move them away from like the volume. You can do this really well, really fast to like, can we start to also think about some a la carte applications, things that are cool that we should talk about, like things that a chef would connect with in terms of either an efficiency or consistency that could be part of our sales technique. I think it's more important if I was a chef and someone told me I could make like 50 croissants very quickly, or they told me I could make a chawamushi or a creme brulee without a water bath in the oven. Which one would make you more curious, right?
Exactly.
Exactly. So I was bringing up little minor things like that. Like you don't now have to like put like a tray of water you're going to spill over yourself and into the custard. You just put it in there, select the right temperature, boom, done. And right into the chiller. Easy peasy. Those kinds of things, like showing them like things they would not even think about were like sensible. The whole concept of blanching, like we used to go into like salted water and then ice. Just perforated tray, low temperature steam in a combi, boom. Production flow is increased. So it was showing manufacturers how to pick topics that connect with a la carte chefs, especially the high end ones who are the people who can actually afford these things, you need to capture people in the beginning development stage of a restaurant, and which is why Rationale does this sort of like RCC programs where they have ovens in the field that consultants can have and people can go look at. And I think a lot of manufacturers, kind of like what we do with Waring, I did that with Breville, I did that with Pack of Jet. People are doing that now, and and then the other smart thing that became part of the equation was to find a really good esoteric, better than small wares supplier that started to take on some equipment. Like JB Prince is a very important, part of the story of modern American cooking. And I wish someone would
Yes.
do a story about them because JB Prince was the first to start to coalesce all these things that we all want in the same place. And, whether you're looking for a pasta machine, a little chiller or whatever, all the hand tools, all the small tools, pastry tools, that was like the place, it was incredible.
It still is
It
the
is
place.
the
I mean,
place.
every time I go to New
Yeah.
York, I make a
It
trip. I
is the
have to.
place. So between JB Prince and Corinne, I would like literally just go midtown to Tribeca, buy a bunch of knives, spend like $2,000 more than I planned on spending, you know, and then
Always.
and that was the building of the relationship between manufacturers, and they were all very happy because they understood that you know they're chef-driven companies and they want to please chefs in all aspects of the culinary chain, from like country clubs to a la carte restaurants to little mom and pop places. Everybody wants to be able to work better and work more efficient.
It's interesting, right? Like we take there's a lot of it that we take for granted,
Yes.
right? And there's nothing wrong with cooking classically, and there's also nothing wrong with using technology to improve on it. I think they're both great. It's just what works more efficiently for you in your establishment?
Absolutely. And, you know, like, I mean, it would be easier and a little bit like disingenuous to say that every 3 Michelin star restaurant has a combi oven, but that is a fact. And potentially every two, too, you know, they all have it. They may not say we're using technology, but they have it. They are using it. I've seen it everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are multiple ones, in fact, you know, in the basement, in the corner, at Garmin J, like there's a combi oven everywhere, you know.
There's something somewhere.
Exactly. Yeah. So, yeah, but like, you know, like there shouldn't be like a fight between classicism and technique versus, you know, you know, this inherent thought that modern technology makes cooking less tactile. It doesn't. It's just supplementation. You know, it's not like AI where they're autonomous decisions. You still need to know the foundation of cooking to be able to apply the tool to the cooking. Yeah. If you make a bad
Exactly.
terrine and you have an electric knife, it's not going to make the terrine better. You can just slice it really straight, but if it's too dense, it's too dense. You know, it is what it is. You need to learn
Exactly.
how to cook.
What's your thought on social media versus real life in the restaurant world?
Oh my God, it's such a Pandora's box. You know, so social media has polluted the conversation on food in both positive and negative ways. The positives, the good news is more people have access to information and cultural variations of what food is, what food's being cooked everywhere. I love that I can go on Instagram and see like some Turkish influencer making like this rice pilaf that I've never seen before, or like someone from Nigeria making egusi with like expensive carabineros from Spain, you know. But part of it also is that there's so much like what we value, like actual honest detail. There's so much bad information that people are just glossing as fact, and people just, you know, occasionally I try to be like disciplined and I'll comment on something. Like there was a conversation once about someone saying you can pasteurize egg yolks at 140 Fahrenheit for 40 minutes. I'm like, are you high? You know, that is not possible. Like, no, you're going to get someone killed. Like, and you politely say to people to be able to be more responsible in sharing accurate scientific information as opposed to just chasing, you know, follows, clicks, and all of those things. And, you know, as long as there's an opportunity to monetize and gloss over things, it unfortunately comes with a lot of misinformation that people will either waste their time and or ingredients, which I would like to hope that people would want to avoid, you know. As far as the other aspects, you know, I'm not a restaurant owner. As far as how social media encourages people to like come to your restaurant or value your restaurant or understand your cooking, it goes back to what we started this conversation initially, which is the word umami. And I feel like so many words have been introduced into the common lexicon of cooking that people actually use them without any real deep understanding of what it actually is. And to the degree that everybody sounds like an expert, but they're not experts. You know, they're just another opinion that's been sort of like given the weight of like an empty balloon. It's not, you know, it's just somebody else's opinion, you know?
I like that. An empty
Yeah.
balloon. I love
You
it.
know, it's like,
That's
no, that's not true, you know? But, you know, it's hard to, you know, we don't need a food police or gatekeepers, but it's on the aggregate. I love social media. I love what it does for food. It really allows people to see things. Social media, you know, long before there was chef collaborations, it was very tough to like justify why is you know, currently flying from San Francisco to like Denmark to cook a dinner. Like, you know, maybe it's a cool thing, you know, it's a fun thing. Like, and you would know about that just by watching on the internet. You don't have all that localization to know everything going on at the same time in too many different places. I think it's a plus, yeah.
What has been your worst professional mistake?
Hmm. That's a good question. I would say it may not have happened yet. Time is still time to screw up. I would have. What was my? So my worst professional mistake would be that I would have, and it's something I'm working at. I would have perhaps developed more of a concurrent exploration of my own culinary cultural origins at the same time, I was developing so much knowledge in Western cooking techniques and cuisines. You know, in the last few years, I've kind of, shifted a big part of my energy to like looking at what is the food of Nigeria, what is the cultural origin of Nigerian food, what are the ingredients, and I'm increasingly fascinated with that. Like if we think of the food and ingredients in general, let's erase the borders and the countries and the cultures and the religions. If we were to think of food as just like an A to Z line item list of ingredients in the categories, the spices, the acids, vinegars, citruses, the meats, the everything. So we just have this like DNA chart of food. What makes food, some of the best food, really amazing and unique is the ability to sensibly make cross-cultural correlations just based on the simple chemical attributes of the ingredients you're using. Like teriyaki sauce has no relationship to butter. But even on a plain level, something that simple, just two things. If you were to take butter to the brown butter stage and you deglaze it with teriyaki sauce and squeeze in one yuzu, and there's nothing Japanese about this, that's a very delicious sauce over fish with capers in it, like piccata. But it's not Italian either. You see what I mean?
No.
So like,
no.
So you see, like, if you kind of like just like grill a piece of turbo and then put that on top of it, you'll be like, this is fantastic. What kind of food is this? It's just food, So and that's a kind of a simple, lazy example, but if you were to think of how much opportunity we have to create deliciousness with a broader perspective of the ingredients from around the world, I think that's one thing that I've been fascinated with for a long time, and I wish I'd paid a bit more attention to. Yeah. Yeah.
What has been your most memorable meal?
Ooh, that's a good one. I would say the best meal I've ever had, like a full fancy meal. My most memorable meal.
It could be whatever.
Whatever.
It could be sitting on the beach having a piece of fried fish with your feet in the sand. I don't know. Everybody's got a memorable meal.
I would say that my favorite high-end restaurant meals in the world that I've had to date were both in Spain. I would say the dinner at El Silla de Can Roca in Girona would be number one. And a very close number two would be Disfruta Barcelona. Disfruta was special. And if there was a number three, it would be Echevarri, to be honest with you. I think the Spanish take it. And those are vastly different restaurants. Can Roca was just like the best expression of like the super no holds bar, super fancy restaurant with no time limit, And Disfruta just makes this really compelling case that, all those things that you think are too weird and you don't like in restaurants is because those restaurants don't know how to make it. These guys do. And it's amazing. So I love that place. Like I wanted to hate like Disfruta when they put this like carbonara in front of me. And I love Italian food. I'm like, what is this? It's like a bacon noodle and this stuff. It's delicious. It was so good. I'm like, this is clever and it is tasty. And of course, the trip to Echevarri along with, and just like the whole Victor's je ne sais quoi and just like being such a kind host and showing you how he grills everything. Like I've ever learned so much about fire and just how to cook with fire. And sorry, one more Spanish. Gateria, you have to go to El Cano for the grilled turbo. That's it. Those are like my favorite meals. I'll get on a plane. I go to Spain anytime, But then that being said, some of the most mind-blowing, compelling meals was the time I spent in Indonesia. I lived in Indonesia for like a month, twice, and in Bali and Ubud. You know where Ubud is. Ubud is where Will Goldfarb is. Room for dessert.
Yeah, Will's great.
Will's great. So Will's in Ubud, but like going to the night markets in Ubud and Janiar in Indonesia is just like $8 worth of food that just blows your mind. Nasi, everything. Nasi campur, nasi uduk, nasi goreng, all the meats. Like Indonesian food.
Love that.
It's just like a roller coaster of madness, It's so good, yeah. That would be, yeah. I mean, there's great food everywhere. Hainanese chicken in Hong Kong. Uh, I don't know, real Szechuan food. Mapo tofu, like real mapo tofu is like one of my favorite things to eat. Mapo tofu and rice. You know. Yeah.
What won't you eat?
What would
There's
I eat?
something you won't eat.
There's
I know
nothing.
there's something you
So
won't
I'm
eat.
not into this whole like. I used to have a joke that I would not eat anything with like less than 2 legs and more than 4. You know, that was the criteria. You know, so like all these people who are like trying to like insects in Mexico and any of that nonsense, I'm like, no, not going there. Sorry. So no insects, despite the protein content. I'll get my protein from Whole Foods. Thank you. And that's the only thing that I just feel weird about like eating like things I've squashed under my feet, you know.
That's an interesting way of thinking about
Yeah,
it.
no, I would not. And then the only other thing I really like, there's nothing I've never tried. I've tried fugu. I didn't think it was worth the hype. I mean, it is what it is. Uh, I'm not a huge fan of natto, but I've tasted it.
Yeah, I'm not a natto
Yeah.
fan. I'm not a natto fan.
Tempeh I think is okay. I'm not like, I don't think those things. So those are the things I'm not like. But usually most things in some part of their life cycle I will eat in some way, Yeah. Frog legs are
If
weird.
you could,
Yeah.
frog legs are
Yeah.
weird, huh?
I,
I
I
like
like
frog
them
legs.
fried only. Just like crispy fried, like tempura. Delicious.
Yeah. If you could eat with anyone, gone or with us, who would it be?
Miles Davis.
About that. What's been your biggest culinary flop? The dish that sunk the ship. Because you remember Food Arts when they used to have that great section?
Yeah.
What did they know?
What's my
Right?
culinary flop? It's the thing is when you kind of work in this development phase and you're just trying to make things work, everything is a flop till you figure out the correct avenue to make it work, you see? And I think rather than come up with one answer, I think it's probably more important to inspire people to think in a kind of a more logical, studied manner in terms of how they approach creativity and understanding that fundamentally some things are simply not going to work and you should abandon the idea. But if you have the right technique, technology, and application for it, you can figure out the way to. That's what basically Alex does. That's what Ideas in Food is to think of a logic of everything. You'll say like, it's a terrible idea to try to make pepperoni XO, but guess what? It's good if you make it properly. Yeah, it's super good. Yeah, on pizza too. Yeah. So,
what's your favorite cookbook?
oh, and we're sitting in my library. What is my favorite cookbook? It's probably here. I'm going to show it to you. You have a second?
Yeah, go.
Let's go get it. My favorite cookbook is. Hold on. Hang on. Let's see. I'll see. Is that one? Ah, yeah, here it is. Here are the contenders. This is first. Number 1.
Oh yeah.
The original with like all of the pictures of Aubrac and all of the food long before, this book is great. It's in French. You'll need to understand French, but best cookbook ever.
Oh, wow, Raymond Blanc.
Yes.
That's a
The
great one.
The original, the great. And of course, everyone's favorite. Wait.
Everyone's favorite. Oh, White Heat. Yeah.
And although, so I was in London at the time, so I was able to get all the hot cup.
All of them?
All food from land and sea is great. Mirabelle. All of Marco's
Yeah,
books.
they're great.
They're great. Those are great books.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, those are my favorites.
Amazing.
Yeah. A lot of really inspiring learning how to cook without any of the glossy stories of cooking with your grandmother in Tuscany every summer,
Yeah. Classic cooking. What's your must-have kitchen tool?
Super sharp knife. Super duper sharp knife.
Advice? One piece of advice for a young cook.
Use your best commodities wisely, which is your time and your money. Like drink less after work, buy more books, buy more tools, eat different cuisines. Once a month, get in a car, drive to Queens, and go eat, like, whether you're in Flushing or like in Astoria, just go eat something different. Just get out of your city. Better yet, you're an American. You have a golden passport. You can fly anywhere in the world tomorrow with no visa, virtually. Take the opportunities to use it. You know how many hills we have to climb to like go anywhere as American residents? Like, travel, eat, drink, and pursue your craft with like the opportunities that you have that most people in the world don't have. The people you're going to see and eat can't come here to see and eat. So go see them and go eat their food. That's what I say.
Should chefs read their reviews or no?
Depends on how emotionally balanced they are. It does.
I love that.
Yeah. I mean, like, if you can take the heat, you can certainly, I think in the context of how restaurant reviews, the traditional newspaper ones are done, I think they do collaborate and do a Q&A fact checking with you before they take things to print, right? That's still a thing?
It should
So
be,
you have a
you would
sense
hope.
of the tone. So from that perspective, I think you can take it as like a grain of salt if there's something you disagree with. I don't think it's so hurtful. I mean, if you're talking about like just the random influencer who's reviewing your restaurant, I would not even pay attention to any of that nonsense. I'll just be like, someone came in and said like, my risotto was a little cold, like this needs more acidity. I'm like, dude, you have too much vocabulary. You don't even know what to do with it. So I would not. It really depends on the sauce, the gravity of the sauce. You can't emotionally attach yourself to every opinion, otherwise you'll end up in Bellevue Hospital. So just take it for what it is. Yeah, you can't. Yeah.
What's your favorite food city?
Oof. Shoot. In America or in the world? In the world.
It's up to you.
Favorite food city is wow, San Sebastian.
What's important to you if you were hiring a cook? What are you looking for?
Intuition, attention, and intention. Like, you have to be able to know enough to think ahead. You need to be focused on what you're doing. And you need to understand the underlying mission goal of the entity you're working in as a teamwork, cohesion, you see? So there's no conflict either in interpersonal relationships, in culinary direction, or in consistency. I would say those are the three most important things.
What makes you happy as a chef?
That I don't have a restaurant?
That's fucking hysterical.
Yeah, that makes me real happy. Yeah.
All right. You're funny. Wow. Coffee or tea?
Tea, sadly. Coffee upsets my stomach. I didn't grow up drinking coffee. Tea for me. I drink Earl Grey tea, Earl Grey crème, palais de thé. Best tea.
Pancakes or waffles?
Depends on if there's fried chicken involved.
There you go.
And some good smoked maple syrup from Bliss. Yeah. Yeah.
Oatmeal or yogurt?
Definitely yogurt. I drink yogurt every morning.
Bacon or sausage?
I would say bacon. Bacon. BLT is my favorite sandwich. Yeah, so.
Chicken or duck?
That's funny. My favorite piece of poultry to eat I've ever had in a restaurant in America is the duck that Lee Wallen makes at Boca in Chicago. The dry-aged duck is fantastic. For me at home, roast chicken. I've made like 1,000 Zuni chickens, So for me, it's probably in a restaurant, duck, at home, chicken.
Beef or pork?
Definitely beef. Dry-aged beef is like my favorite, in small amounts thing. Protein, yeah.
Quail or squab?
Hey, quail, yeah. The
hot dog, hamburger.
Joyce Farm quail is pretty special. Hamburger, unless said hot dog is in a New England lobster roll bun.
Ketchup or mustard?
Mustard. Before ketchup.
French fries, onion rings.
Fries.
Taco burrito.
I'd say whew, taco if it's flour. I mean burrito if it's obviously it's flour, but like I'm not like a huge fan of nixtamal. Like I like it, but like I prefer like a really good schmaltzy flour tortilla, and I love tacos like that. Yeah, you know,
Pasta or noodles.
pasta, easy. Yeah.
Ravioli or dumplings.
Probably dumplings,
Raw oysters, raw clams.
oysters.
Lobster or crab.
Allergic to both.
Sea urchin or caviar.
Uni all the way.
Black or white truffles.
Black, actually. Black Perigord from France in November. Or Burgundy.
Meatballs or sausage.
Polpette, meatballs.
Favorite pizza style.
Favorite pizza style is with the options being Neapolitan, New York, and what else is there? Chicago,
There's Chicago, there's square pies, there's all sorts of stuff.
Detroit. Yeah, that's right. Ooh. I like those thin tavern pies that they're doing now that are super crispy and just like tasty. Yeah, tavern pie. Yeah,
Butter,
olive oil,
duck fat, pork fat.
duck fat.
Favorite acid to work with.
Verjus,
All right. Red wine or white wine.
white Burgundy all the way.
Light beer, dark beer.
I drink stout. Dark.
White spirits, dark spirits.
Interesting answer. It's really good bourbon when I drink limited. Yeah.
Favorite sparkling.
Wine.
Champagne, Lambrusco, Cava,
I thought you meant
Prosecco.
specific producer. I would say, yeah, champagne method champagne, little champagne. You know,
Do you prefer dessert or cheese?
I prefer cheese.
Do you prefer chocolate or fruit?
I prefer chocolate,
Honey or maple syrup?
maple syrup,
Favorite candy?
Maltesers from the UK. They're like malted milk balls.
Fast food choice.
That's interesting. Fast food choice would be. Oh, I don't need a ton of fast food. Popeye's chicken.
Popeyes is good.
Yeah, Popeye's chicken. Good.
Late night snack. What's your late night snack?
My late night snack is I have in my freezer like at least 10 packs standard at any time of sun noodles, ramens, the ones that are frozen, so that you can just make either shio or shoyu ramen or tonkatsu. And then I buy like a little piece of menma and some chasu, so I can just whistle up a ramen in like 10 minutes. That's my midnight snack.
That's
What's
your guilty
Go
pleasure?
to Nigeria Market, folks. They have it there. My guilty pleasure is for someone like I make it myself very often. It's not an easy thing, but like I love like cow soy. The southern Thai noodle dish. Just like even when it's just chicken leg, cow soy. Oh yeah, it's so good.
What would be your last meal?
My last meal would be. Should we stay on brand or just make up something? So
Whatever you want.
3 years ago, I did Mark Vetri's Alex's Lemonade event, and I was, funny enough, sponsored by West Home Wagyu and a very generous caviar importer. And all I did was just grill West Home New York strips to medium rare, end to end, little slice, let it rest, one gigantic dollop of like Kaluga on it. That was it. A little bit of smoked olive oil from Castillo de Canena and sea salt. People were losing their minds. It was like a $55 little 2-ounce piece of meat, but like it was on the house. That was great. Yeah, it's good. That meat is so good.
Nice. It's
Stupid.
delicious.
Yeah.
Shola, thank you so much for taking time
Thank
out
you,
of your
Chris.
schedule
It's been a
to
good
join
day.
me on the podcast.
Thank you. It's fun.
If people want to find you and reach out to you for questions or to work with you or, follow you on social media, you want to share that information with them?
I'm Instagram at Studio Kitchen, one word, and it's kind of a publicly visible account. You can follow the account and send me a DM. I'm also Studio Kitchen at Gmail, which is very easy to remember. So there's a lot of fun stuff going there. Yeah.
there you have it, folks. If you got a question, you're not sure what you're doing,
You're looking
you're
for
interested
something
in
to
a new piece of
buy. Should I buy it?
looking for some resources there, Shola's your
Not to
man.
waste your
So make
money
sure you
and your
reach out.
time.
Yeah, there you go. Well, Shola,
Thank you, brother.
thank you very much. I appreciate
We'll
your
see each
time.
other soon enough. Chicago, here we come.
Yes, for sure. Hey, and folks, if you liked this podcast, please share with your friends and hit that like button.
Cheers, my.
Thanks for listening to How the Sausage is Made. If you've liked what you've heard today, please make sure to like and subscribe, and don't be afraid to tell your friends about it.